Well, Geoff, I've really been looking forward to speak to you, and I know we're going to get into a lot of things. But listen, Geoff, I know you've gone through cancer as a young adult, and we'll cover all that ground in there as well, Geoff. But first of all, I want to know, like, what was life like before cancer?
Yeah, before cancer, I would say it was very similar to a lot of young adults. I was loving life. Like I was having the time of my life. I was pushing my limits anywhere I could find them. And I had just, so before cancer, I just finished university, studied business, and had started my own business when I was in university, and was having a great time just cutting a path and starting something from nothing, and kind of born and raised in an entrepreneurial family. So it was really always in my heart that I was going to start my own business. So I had been doing that, and finished my last exam for my business degree, and moved out of my parents' house the same week. Had just an amazing summer after that, with buddies, and just playing lots of sports. Hockey and soccer were the biggest ones for me, and then just honestly loving what I was doing. I even before that, I think I was always kind of that guy, like always, pretty adaptable, and um, able to find happiness in some of the toughest situations, but largely unaware of what was going on around me, very kind of just like in the moment. But as I grew and went through university, that really evolved a fair bit. And I can see, even then, I remember remarking how different I was aware I was after university compared to before. So I really had this huge transformation of self within that 5 years that I was doing my business degree. And that just gave me even more confidence to go take on the world. And that's really what I felt I was doing. And that's what I was, if you asked me, that's what I would tell you. I was taking on the world and ready to take over the world. And I felt like I could do it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that's such a great, really, description of so many of us who go through cancer as young adults. Is you're just in a stage where you're growing, and you said you're going through a transformation, right? Like so many things were changing, and then like how did you kind of then you find out that you have cancer? Like how did things change from then on?
So, I'm pretty headstrong, which has got some strengths and advantages sometimes. But that would mean, sometimes I have a tendency to override the emotions. So when I was diagnosed, I did I kind of took a very strategic, methodical assessment originally in the first, hours really, and then the first days and weeks. But after I got my head settled around that, then I did allow, I allowed myself a little bit of space to feel the reality of what I was up against, which of course, in those early moments, early days, weeks, months, even, very few of us have any real idea what it is we're up against and what the road ahead is going to look like, right? Like as much as the docs could prepare us, um, there's no real way. And that's probably like life, right? Like how very few times, I guess, you can't predict, even to use my degree, my university, like you can't predict what your whole 5 years is going to be like the first semester you're in school. So that was very much for me. So I headstrong and looking for the lessons. I did kind of thankfully tune into that early. I had this really strong feeling from within that I was going to learn a lot of important shit about life and all the things in it. And so I tried to tune myself into that. But honestly, I always had my optimism grounded in realism. So I've never tried to be, or just by nature, been one of those, just always the sun is shining, always roses, always. That's not how I live my life. And it was the same when I got cancer. So I I wanted to know from my docs, like, what are the odds of this? Like, what is my prognosis? I want to know what I'm dealing with here. And then I'm going to try and find the good and the optimism within that path. And that's kind of how I started that process, and how I moved through it. There's a lot of ups and downs within that time frame, of course. But in the early days, that's kind of how I approached it, was be headstrong and allow myself some moments to tune into what I was feeling. But I didn't let that rule the day. And even for better or for worse, right? Not that that's the best way for anybody to deal. It was just the way I dealt in those early days.
Yeah, good on you, Geoff, because it's such a huge thing. I think what you're describing is in many ways really taking control of the situation, where you kind of go, well, I'm gonna really try to really figure out what's going on. I'm gonna like look at the facts, and then gonna take that on, and really try to really deal with the reality of what's going on. And like looking back on it now, Geoff, like what is, I guess, like the hardest thing about, I guess the cancer experience with all of those, the ups and downs that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hard parts. There's no question. Like probably in the moment, um, I didn't I didn't connect or worry too much about the hard parts. There was a lot of loss. Like I moved back home with my parents, for example. I shut my business down. I was disconnected from friends a fair bit, like during when I was in hospital and having chemo and those kinds of things. But in the immediate moment, those things didn't bother me. I was probably more focused on what was going on in my life and how I was going to get to the next phase, next round of chemo, next step kind of thing, right? There's no question. Deciding to have a bone marrow transplant was a huge decision for me. And then 3 months after that, I got an infection in my Hickman catheter. Many of us have had those Hickman catheters, just a central line on my chest. I got an infection in that, ended up in intensive care. I was on life support in a drug-induced coma for a month, and I was super sick. I was never expected to leave intensive care. When I did, I had to rebuild everything. Really, like I had to rebuild my body. I had to learn to walk again and stuff. But I really also had to rebuild my mind. And that was the first time for me, Joe, when my mindset, my mental game, so to speak, wasn't my strongest point. Like my body had failed me all over the place, right? Like these infections and rigors and reactions to chemo and blood transfusions, like all the shit that we've all had. Like my body was in and out and up and down all the time, but my mind was always strong, except after intensive care. It just totally destroyed my confidence. I had ICU psychosis. I was in a bad place, and I didn't understand. I wasn't rational, so I didn't understand that I could go to sleep tonight, for example, and that I was going to wake up in the morning. So like I went for a period there where I didn't sleep, and then I was afraid to sleep, and then it was a big period of recovery. That was probably, the most intensely challenging time of my life. And then again, like for so many of us, even in that time, when things are intense, and I pretended cancer was hockey because I am Canadian after all. But I did pretend in my mind that each round of chemotherapy was like a game in this playoff series I was playing in my head. Talked about it like it was hockey. I had a hockey stick and jersey, and like I literally totally wrapped myself around this strategy of hockey. But like even when the hockey game's on the go in real life, the fans are in the stands and people are paying attention and they're cheering. But when the game is over, eventually everybody leaves the stands, and cancer is a lot like that. When the action is high and the chemo's on the go and the hair's falling out and those kinds of things, the people are around often, and if we're lucky, but it's my experience and certainly the experience of so many survivors that when things settle down, everybody else goes back to their own life. And for me, that was certainly another hugely challenging part of the experience, was when everybody kind of thought I was getting back to good and their lives went back to normal, but mine sure didn't. So recovering from that, and I had a recurrence a couple of years later, and it was the same kind of experience where, when the intention is on and the treatment's on, and there was lots of attention, but eventually everybody's life has to go back to normal. It's not, I'm not blaming people for that. It's just a function of probably life and how it rolls, but it can be super tough. And I know you and so many survivors would have had similar kinds of experiences where just, if you're lucky, you've got love and support when you're going through it. But even then, most times it fades away as your recovery starts, often the case. And don't get me started on those bells in the chemo clinics, Joe.
Yeah, but I'm so feeling you, Geoff, with what you're saying about. I think people kind of taking a step back from your life. I think it's so common with especially young adults. I think it's so different for, I guess, people who are older, because I guess maybe their friends and family, they're kind of used to people going through shit. Like they're more experienced at that. They know the right thing to do. They know kind of the right thing to say. And I think a lot of younger people, like, they have no idea, and they kind of expect you to just kind of bounce back into kind of whatever the life you had before. But you're obviously in a place where things have changed, and you're kind of trying to really figure out, like, like, who am I now, and like, what am I gonna do, right? Similar sort of things, I guess. And so I guess, what was something that really helped you the most during those times of where you're trying to figure out, like, what to do with yourself?
I mean, I had some excellent friends that were close and are still close, and that helped a lot. Um, I had an email group. This is quite a while ago, Joe. So there was no blogs, there's no social media, but I started an email group my first week in hospital, and that turned out to be like a life-changing decision. There's no question that led to YACC. Like that was the start of that outreach and the connection with people, and it actually unexpectedly kind of became like a support group in the absence of me having a connection with a lot of people, because I was isolated most often. So then that helped a lot, just being able to process things. Like I go through phases in my life where I'm journaling all the time and then not that much, but there is a really helpful process, like talking, any kind of expression to bring the stuff out from inside, right? So I found the writing and the emails to be super helpful. And I went through this crazy period of growth during, but then specifically after my first cancer challenge and transplant, and had tapped into some mentors that helped a lot as well. Just a ton of wisdom and guidance around discovery of self, because I think when we talked about like my university days, my awareness had improved, but nothing like after cancer. Awareness of self and what was important, and what I wanted to do, and how I thought about the world, like that had evolved a lot, and I had a lot of help with that evolution, and I feel like it was one of the greatest gifts that I got from cancer, was this changed mindset about life, and what's really important in it for me. And those were some of the biggest pieces. And I think, then having the opportunity, making the opportunity to do things. I deal through doing a lot of times. So like processing, writing is helpful, but then actually doing stuff. So getting out and connecting with people and engaging, it was a huge part of the healing for me. And it has continued to be so, to be totally honest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Geoff. And so, in terms of like, when you say journaling, do you have a particular way of doing it? Like, how often do you do it? Like, how does it work for you?
Yeah. So when I had my first transplant, which was 22 years ago this week, when I had my first transplant, I had someone had given me one of those simple little blue exercise books that they're bound, kind of hardcover, and I just started writing. in my journal the day of my first transplant. And just what's on the go, what's in your mind, what was the playlist for my transplant, what was happening in my life, what were my counts like, what were my docs saying, friends, like just whatever. And then I would definitely use that time and that space to reflect on where I was. And that was basically me taking that email group that had been in very public for the previous 6 months, which I maintained, but then just basically allowing me to go inside and be more private with some of the thoughts and processing that I did. And I didn't have a structure. I just wrote in it whenever I wanted, which was pretty frequently for a long time. And then I continued. So when that book got filled up, I just kept adding books. And I have probably 4 or 5 of them from, both cancer experiences, and life carried on. So the frequency of the writing tapered off, but that's how I did it. It was really about how am I feeling, and do I have things that I want to just explore and talk about with myself, and that would often lead to me talking about it with other people too. But there is some real incredible power, I think, in taking what's going on in your head and your heart and putting it on a piece of paper, and then just allowing yourself to see what you've written and what you're talking about, and telling yourself that, I think, it can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, Geoff. I mean, it just gets, it helps you to really kind of make sense of the craziness, right? Like, especially when it's so hard to really figure out what the hell is going on, and what to do next, and make sense of what you feel or what you don't feel, and really kind of describe it. And I guess that helps you to kind of figure out, kind of what to do with yourself. But also the other part of it, that, like you mentioned, is first of all, is doing it through journaling, and finally finding a way to express yourself, but also through that kind of connection, like you did that through the email group, which is just really cool. And so tell me, how did that, obviously, like you mentioned, that kind of planted the seed for YACC. So how did that kind of take on, a life of its own, in your life later?
It I'm a super intuitive decision maker. I balance that with the the analytics and the data, and I like some of that, but a lot of my decisions in life are really made with my gut, and a lot of my cancer decisions were made with my gut. What felt right, and what path was calling or pushing me. And that's how YACC got started too. I mean, I started that email group, and then as I was in the middle of treatment, probably my third round of treatment, I was just making notes on my computer one night, and I remember, because there's a very specific nurse of mine that interrupted me. The first time I had the idea for YACC, what used to be called Real-Time Cancer, was late one night in my hospital room, because I used to sleep all in the day, so I'd be up a lot in the night with writing emails and playing on my computer. So I was there, and I had this idea that these emails might help somebody else someday, because I learned a lot about them and about life, and I had this idea that maybe I'm going to create an organization to share my experiences and the experiences of other young adults. So I was writing that down, and she interrupted me at like 2 a.m. in the morning. She just come in to check on me, and I said, "Don't forget this. This is a moment. I got an idea here. And I think it's gonna take flight sometime." And I joke with her every now and then when I see her about that night. And it took a while. Like, it was a year plus later, more than a year later. But that original idea kept feeling right. And even after my transplant, I was in Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto, where I had my transplant, and in Clinic H there in the outpatients. And I had with my dad, and I wrote in my journal, I was like, my goal is to launch the organization within a year. I wrote that on June 20th, 1999. And on June 15th, 2000, so I got in under the wire by 5 days, we started what's become YACC. And that's kind of how it started. And again, I got to say, Joe, like there was three big things driving that decision. Um, there was an element for sure that I knew I learned a lot, and I felt like other people could benefit from that. There certainly was an element that, cancer at 22 raises the awareness, I think, within us that we may not have 60 more years to make our mark. So there was a part of me that felt like I got to use my life to do something now, and this is what it's going to be. And then that third part was really what I mentioned a minute ago, is like the dealing through doing. Like I needed to process this thing, and starting YACC was a huge part of that. And I'm not shy about talking about that. There was a huge part of starting YACC that was self-serving to help me figure out what I had been through. All of this crazy experiences of cancer and transplant and ICU and recovery. And I needed some processing on what the fuck just happened to me. And honestly, the processing through doing, it was incredibly helpful for me. So those three things combined to help, be the spark, if you will, that got the fire of YACC going. And honestly, from the very first time I talked about it, it's been a team effort, man, like a big growing team effort. Way more people behind the scenes, like anything cool and significant. I think it takes a team or an army of people to make it happen. And YACC is no different. I say I get a disproportionate amount of the credit for the amazing stuff that we do. There's no question about it.
Yeah, but you had the vision, Geoff, and I think it's such a powerful idea of really what you were talking about, really just kind of processing through really contribution. I think that's so cool, man, because that is the best way to be. Because you are kind of trying to really you realize that like you say, there isn't time. And I think we all go through this experience when it just hits you over the head and you realize, man, I gotta do something. I mean, I like, for me it was like I also realized, I haven't had the time to do what I've always wanted to do, and I didn't even know what I wanted to do, but just know I haven't done it yet. And I think that's just so powerful that you found a way to really and kind of and bring people kind of on the journey with you. And and everyone I've kind of talked to around YACC, like with Gabrielle and Alex and Karina and everyone, just it's just incredible people who really want to make a difference. I mean, how did you initially get to rally the troops and just create such a such a sense of people wanting to be a part of this and make a difference within with YACC?
I think so. I've always been a dreamer, still a huge fan of dreams, which another word for dreams is goals for me. But always had ideas and dreams that I wanted to chase. And I really am a huge believer, Joe, that the second most important thing in life is having dreams. The first and most important thing is, what do we do with them? And I had a friend years ago complain to me about what she wanted to do with her life and this and that and this and that, and she got all sooky and said, "Oh, I'm just a dreamer." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute, you're just a dreamer. You never find a dreamer, a bigger dreamer than me." And she said, "You're not a dreamer because all your dreams come true." And I said, "Bullshit. First of all my dreams don't come true. I'm not playing defense for the Pittsburgh Penguins." But the reality is, the only dreams of mine that ever came true, Joe, are the ones that I took off the shelf, man. They're the ones that I went after. And a critical step, I think, in that process for everybody to, unsolicited advice from me is, you just got to start where you are. Start where you are, and that's what I did. So I'm here. I'm 23 or 4 by this time. I just recovering. I've got friends and family that are connected. I have a vision. I can create that vision of what I want to do. And then I start to talk to people about it, and I engage and I ask for their help. and people have stepped up ever since. I've been asking people for help for 21 years, and people step up. Everybody doesn't say yes. It's part of life for sure. But people help, and then you take the next step on your vision, and you keep stepping forward. And that is how YACC was started, and how it is where it is. And we repeat that, man. You know, sometimes hundreds of times a day, just asking for help, having people jump in and fill new and different roles to help, you know, grow the division and expand the impact of the organization. And Gabrielle and Alex and Karine are, you know, three of the incredible people that are connected to YACC and making huge contributions to YACC. And there's literally, you know, tens of thousands of them every year, Joe, that make us go. Like there is, you know, I'll tell you, I can tell you all day, but like just yesterday, a kid signs up for the Shave for the Brave, which is our biggest fundraiser. This young guy, Sam, he's the same age as my middle daughter, Mira. Sam's dad just died a month ago. He was a little over our age range, and he was a great guy, Rob. And Sam has been shaving his head for 5 years. Sam started shaving like in grade 2 or whatever the math is on that. And he gets his head shaved for YACC, for young adults like me and you, every year. And he's in junior high now. His school isn't participating. COVID's got the shave all shut down. Sam is still going to shave for the Brave this year, man. Like that, there are literally, Joe, I could tell you, we could take the whole rest of our day and I could tell you stories about people like that who help in all kinds of different ways, man. And it has been a huge team effort, which is why I get a disproportionate amount of the credit for the amazing things we do. There's so many stories like Sam's and Gabrielle's and Alex's and Karine, who moved her whole life to Newfoundland to work at YACC. There's literally just thousands and thousands of them. And honestly, man, I'm so grateful to be working with them all. And I'm excited about the things that we do and the impact that we make and the adjustments and the responsiveness that we have to the world around us and the mad environment, man. It's just, it's a pleasure to be on this team. And I'm grateful for that, man.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I just love it, and it's just it's a fantastic environment to be. And I know that you guys are doing some fantastic things, and you've got you guys have an awesome event coming up. So, talk to me about that.
Yeah, man. Like I remember. Do you remember where you were when COVID hit? Like when the world changed? Like I remember where I was, man. Like a year ago, I was in Winnipeg. And we were, honestly, I met with them yesterday, the Cancer Care Manitoba in the center of Canada. We were going to host our conference there in 2020. And we had 130 spots over full. I had 130 people on the wait list. And I was meeting with the foundation to try and raise more money so we could open up more spots. It was already going to be our biggest conference ever. We were pumped. Winnipeg was pumped. And I went home that night to my hotel room and heard on Sportsnet that the NBA canceled their season. And I was like, whoa, what? The NBA canceled their season. So that to me, that was one of those turning points where I was like, wow. The next morning, Manitoba found their first 2 presumptive cases of COVID, and everything switched. Everything. We went the day before, we were like, let's get more money raised. Let's get more survivors. The next day was, I don't think we're having this event. I mean, it took a few days for that to happen, but that's essentially what happened. So we went from this moment of mad promo and excitement to face-to-face stuff to shut down all face-to-face events. So that included the Shave for the Brave. So Sam and so many others didn't get the chance to shave at their school or their office or in the mall or wherever. So we had to adjust on that front. And then on the program side, the same thing. I mean, 2/3 of our program resources were about the face-to-face stuff. So the retreats and the adventure and the conference, local life, which we run a social program in 8 markets across the country. So, all those things were paused. So we did that. And I got to say, it probably took me 2 or 3 weeks to settle in and understand, like, what is going on? Like, how long is this thing going to be? How deep is it going to run? And very quickly, as the ED part of my role, it's not just a survivor. The executive director part of my role is like, we have to survive this. Like, we got to come out the other side. Like, my number one job right now is to make sure the organization can survive to be breathing on the other side of whatever this is. And that became the primary focus of my planning early. And honestly, on the program side, Karine, who and Leslie and Gabrielle and Angie, like that, they dug in and they did this beautiful reactive response of, this is the new environment. We know survivors still want to connect. We know cancer didn't stop. The waiting rooms aren't as full, but cancer's still going on, man. So we did this responsive, reactive jump to a whole bunch of new stuff. And honestly, some of it we've had on our wish list for a long time and never had the capacity to take on. So that was kind of fun and exciting on the program side. There's lots of challenges, lots of learning. But man, we can't wait to get back to face-to-face. But in the absence of that, this digital space gives us a different kind of experience, but it's still meaningful and powerful for me to see you here today and to connect with you this way. And it can be the same for survivors. And honestly, you do give up some intimacy, Joe, because when you are here in my living room and we're having a beer, like, that's going to be even better than this. But in the absence of that, when you are in the digital, you really gain in reach. The number of people that you can reach, as you know, Joe, through your podcast, like, you can reach so many more people in this digital space than you can by those that you can bring together face to face. So we've been leaning into that. So we went virtual with our conference within 5 weeks. We had virtual conference for 326 instead of 130, and then did a series of web chats. Karine's hosting a weekly talk show with all kinds of experts jumping in. A bunch of great stuff, and a second virtual conference in the middle part of the winter. And amidst all of this early brainstorming, Karine had this idea that was really building on, again, an idea we've had for a long time, which is to bring in a whole bunch of stakeholders together around the young adult cancer experience. So we've traditionally had our programs focused exclusively on young adult survivors and their young adult supporters, right? So that means your friends, your partners, siblings, but your parents couldn't come. And that was for, I think, really good reasons, because we were here to serve young adults first, and we wanted them to be their true, authentic selves. So that was the focus of our programs. But in the digital space, as you know, it's pretty easy to keep the parents and the kids separated. Just send them to different Zoom rooms. So we are in the middle, like in the deep middle, maybe close to the end of the promo for Primetown, which is a summit for young adults and those who care about them. So the first time we'll have parents come. For the first time, we'll have health professionals, a big, huge contingent of them, coming from all disciplines: docs, nurses, social workers, psychologists, anybody who's interested, students, researchers. So they're coming, and we're going to have, of course, full plenary sessions with everybody, and then they're going to have their customized streams where they're going to get access to just incredible content. Content that will come from experts across a whole variety of areas, but also content from survivors. So they get to hear, another bunch of really powerful, compelling stories, just like yours and mine, about how people, how their life was before cancer, how they managed after, during cancer, and where they are today. And that the lineup of experts is just going to be incredible. We'll talk about sex. We're talking about cannabis. We're talking about Canada's new medical assistance and dying law, MAID is for short. There's just a load of incredible content. So Primetown is our virtual summit. We're going to have over 1,000 people there, and it's already the biggest thing we've done. We're almost at 600 now, and the best part is you can jump in anytime. So no plane ticket required, no registration fee. And Joe, it's open to anyone in the world, man. If you got a computer and internet connection, and you want to get access to some of this content and hear these stories, You should just register for Primetown because you'll get access to all the content after. You don't have to stay up in the middle of the night down there. You can get access to the content after if the time zones don't work out. But we're so excited about it, and it's just there are opportunities within the crisis, man. Sometimes you got to look really hard for them, but they are there, and Primetown is one of those. And we're pumped to have Cancer Care Manitoba and their foundation right there with us, partnering with us on this.
Yeah, that's so fantastic, man, and just love hearing the fact that you took this challenging time and you kind of really reinvented what you guys are doing and really bringing it to kind of a whole new level, to more people, and just bringing in like I love it. You mentioned real things like like sex. There's all of the stuff that really people want to know about, but you got to bring out those things out into the world. So that's so fantastic. So tell us, how can someone register for Primetown? Where do you
Yeah,
go?
the easiest, primetown.ca. So www.primetown, Primetown, just like it sounds, primetown.ca. And or just Young Adult Cancer's website is have a whole bunch of other information, but you can connect into Primetown. Anybody can register. There are streams, like I said, there'll be streams for survivors who are young adults. There'll be streams for supporters who are young adults, streams for parents, and there will be streams for health professionals of all disciplines will be included in there. Super pumped to have Suleika Jawad coming to hang out with us. I've just finished her book a little while ago. I felt like I was reading a story about myself if I was a girl. Crazy. She had leukemia at 22, just like me, like the relationship stuff, the treatment stuff. It was so powerful, and she's a much better writer than I am. But super pumped to have Suleika coming, and she's going to come and we'll do an interactive chat, and then she's going to come back and do an actual direct Q&A right with the people, the participants of Primetown. So we're really pumped about that. Alex is on a road trip right now, a virtual road trip. Our mutual buddy Alex, he's on a virtual road trip to Primetown. So he's interviewing guests and talking to survivors and our program team, and the momentum is building, and we're super pumped about it. And we would love to see anybody there. Like I said, it's open to anybody in the world. If you're living on planet Earth and you got an internet connection and you have a connection somehow to the young adult cancer cause, we would love to see you in Primetown.
Beautiful. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for sharing this and for the invitation to Primetown. It sounds like it's going to be an incredible event, and you bring all these fantastic people and just knowledge and just a connection, which is, I guess, the biggest thing out there. So and just lastly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for what you do in the world, man, because I think that's huge. And it's such a powerful difference that you're making. So thank you,
Joe. I appreciate the kind words, dude. I'm grateful to be here with you, man, and I can't wait till we're face to face sometime down there or up here. And keep using your voice for good. The world needs more voices. They need to hear from survivors, and we really appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much, Geoff. It's just loved connecting with you, man, and yeah, love it, man.
All right, dude. You keep taking care, and I can't wait till the next time, whatever that is.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
Love it.
Thanks, Geoff. You take care, man.
All right, dude.
Catch up.